The podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.
And we're reading Stephen King's It, Part 4, July of 1958, Chapter 13, The Apocalyptic Rockfight. This chapter was 41 pages long, and that's 3.76% of the book.
In 1985, Bill arrives first at the library that night and waits as Mike closes up the place up for the others to arrive. He thinks about how instinctually he was made the leader of the losers, because he was the idea man. When a question came up, he was the one who they looked to for guidance. In 1958, the losers are gathered in the Barrens, looking to Bill to tell them what needs to be done about it. Bill tells about what his father told him about the sewer system, how there are miles and miles of uncharted piping throughout the city, and no one should ever go down there unless they were working on them. He also tells of some research he's done and found out it is what is called a glamour, a manitou, an ilac, or a talus. You get the idea. All creatures that do the same thing, skin change. One of the creatures had a ritual to beat the glamour, the Ritual of Chud. After learning about the ritual, the six decide to go somewhere to shoot off some firecrackers. The dump ended up being a bust, but Bill has the idea to go to the rock quarry. Now at this time, if you asked any of the losers who Henry Bauer hated the most, each one of them for their own reasons would say it was them. However, who Henry hated the most wasn't even part of the losers. Yet, Henry was stalking his most hated kid at that very moment. It was Mike Hanlon. Henry hated Mike because Henry's father, Butch, hated Mike's father, Will. Butch would go on and on about how the Hanlons had ruined everything with their family, how they had lied them up, and it had seeped into Henry, laying it to poison him. As Henry stalks his prey, he thinks about the last time he had gotten Mike, knocking him to the ground and covering him with mud. But this time, he had his four friends and some firecrackers of his own that he wanted to put in Mike's shoes. Only at the last possible second, Mike sees the group approaching him and makes a break for it. Mike, very fast for his age, is able to keep ahead of the boys. He's able to keep his pursuers. Mike is able to hold up his pursuers with a large gate and fence. When Henry threatens to Mike again, telling him to open the gate, he admits to poisoning Mike's dog, Mr. Chips, earlier that year. This stunned Mike and caused him to hesitate, giving the bullies time to scale the fence and lob M80s at him. Mike took off again, and without intending to, he makes his way to the rock quarry and comes across the six losers. Exhausted, he begs for help. Without hesitation, Bill takes up the mantle and collects ammunition, and instructs the others to do the same. When Henry Bowers and company arrive, right after Mike, Henry gives a warning to the others to give him Mike, and they won't have any trouble. Well, at least not today. That's when the rocks started to fly, and an epic battle played out with multiple injuries to both sides. Bowers' side got the worst of it, and the others, with Henry, broke and ran, leaving Henry all alone. Go back. That's when the rocks started to fly and the epic battle out with multiple injuries to both sides, but Bowers' side got the worst of it, and the others broke and leaving Henry all alone. Bill and the others stood tall and proclaimed that the Barrens was theirs, and Henry scampered off with his tail between his legs. Mike thanks the group for saving him, and in an instant they knew he belonged. The circle had closed. He was their seventh.
So we're going to dive right into our feelings about the chapter, and I want to start with just kind of talking about, does anybody have any thoughts, first of all, on old Bill watching the teenagers in the library? I didn't really have anything, but I wasn't sure if anybody had something about him before we jump into that day back in 1950.
I don't have anything about Bill, but I do have a note about Mike, and that's, okay. I find it a little odd that Mike's being so nonchalant about the boogeyman getting Mary and Billy, and just telling them, make sure you get home safe. And when they kind of brush it off, he doesn't push the issue. I don't know if it's just he doesn't want to cause a stir, I don't know if I'm reading more into it, maybe because they're older teenagers, they're not really in Pennywise's realm at the moment. But I just find it odd that on tonight, especially since everything's been happening, that he would be so nonchalantly just, yeah, okay, be safe.
First of all, I think they're absolutely within Pennywise's realm because we've had teenagers go missing before.
True.
But I think that's just the dairy coming out in Mike. We just go about our daily lives thing. And even though I think for everybody else in Derry, that's just what they do, that blatant forgetting that happens all the time. For Mike, it's an act, but he does it every day and has done it every day for years and years. So that's just how he functions in that society. He has to
That's fair.
act like it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It was just, like I said, just found it out tonight, him going that route with it. But understandable.
Hey, Bench, will you tap on your microphone for me? Nope.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
Okay.
That sounds a lot better.
That's much better.
Yeah.
And pull it a touch closer to you if you can.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot
Must
better.
have been something I did when I turned Audacity on.
That's possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's reading that or not, but that's fine. Okay.
Alrighty. Yeah, so some of my thoughts, like on the early, older Bill and Mike stuff, I just thought it was kind of interesting to see Mike's relationship with these students. I mean, he's clearly kind of like he seems kind of like a hip, older librarian guy that, I mean, the kids know him. I mean, maybe that's more of just a small town thing that they would know him.
Can I just stop you there with the words hip, old librarian?
Right. That's what I'm like.
Oxymoron?
Right. That's why but it's so Mike. It's so Mike.
It is so Mike.
I mean, it's kind of a cool way of bringing everything we've learned about Mike, at least in my perspective, and it just fits. Like, yeah, he's this nerdy, bookish librarian, but he's
almost
cool.
Almost tipsterish, where, he just lives very meekly and, kind of just under the radar, is happy drinking the, stag or whatever, just to get by, it's fine.
I also picked out some comparisons that Bill made to the younger girl, to Bev. As she walked out the door, he was like, it was no longer the younger girl, it was the young, beautiful Bev. And so I just thought that was interesting, where he kind of saw something in that young girl that reminded him of Beverly, which then kind of leads into the remembering back stuff. But it's just, again, kind of one of those, the past mixing itself into the present, and how that's just kind of confusing for everyone who's dealing with it.
So we're going to transfer back to 1958 then, speaking about being confused. And I love that this section opens up with the 6 losers sitting around going, what do we do? What do we do next? And nobody really knows. And Bill feels the pressure of not knowing, because everybody expects him to know. And I really like that in that day that they're not knowing and feeling like they should know, that's the day they get Mike. That's the day they become the set. And that to me is like the overall idea of this chapter of they were waiting that morning.
Yeah, I get that feeling. Is this when they start talking about the fears that they've had, or that's a little bit later?
Where they like rehash everything.
Yeah.
Let's everybody throw out what happened to you and see what we can learn from this.
Mm-hmm. And they're going through, like, Bill's like, well, we can't call the police. We can't talk to anyone's parents. What about your parents, Richie? And Richie kind of thinks back to when he got shoved and his glasses got broken. And his mom really wasn't, hearing it. I mean, again, parenting Richie might not be the easiest thing. I mean, to be completely fair. But this was a little bit of like the chink in the armor of Richie's parents that we hadn't seen when we met them previously, right? It almost felt a little bit more like Bill's parents, where it was kind of like, well, they're not listening to him, and he has a completely reasonable thing of why it is, and I'm just looking for some help here, and no one's supporting me. And
the fact that he's upset. Like, not only are his parents to believe him that, like, he didn't do it, but also, like, to kind of take care of him, because it was a really upsetting thing.
Yeah. The one issue, though, is, again, we know Richie's personality, and it's more than likely than not, this is not the first time he's broken them. It's obvious. They've mentioned before, he's broken many a pair of glasses. And, one income household, mom's trying to make the money work with dad and everything like that. And it's to the point of, I can understand the frustration on her part. Just like, I don't want to hear it. You know what? We told you, don't break your damn glasses. But yet again, here they are. It's not saying she's right, but I can see where she just, shuts them off. Just, I don't even want to hear your excuses this time.
we're going to have to fix this again, or do this again. So, but to my point that I have on that, the pain of your parents not believing you is way more harmful and hurtful than being pushed in the gutter itself. That pain that Richie's going through from that sucks way more than getting made fun of, getting knocked down, getting hurt, so it's that double-edged sword, like you guys were saying. I completely agree, that it's unfair, but just playing devil's advocate, I can understand where maybe she's coming from.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was my point of, it's not easy parenting Richie in general. And this has happened before, but the fact that it does go to, he's really worked up about this. And she just shuts him down. That's really bad. Mom fail for sure. It reminds me a lot like the very first chapter with Georgie when he slams the door and their mom can't even get out of go and check and see. I don't know. It's just the complacency and ignoration of the kids' needs. It's harmful. I don't like it. Ignoration is not a word.
Good, because I was making fun of you in my head for that.
I saw it.
I was going to say ignoration, which here means nothing because it doesn't really exist. Can we talk about Henry Bowers killing Mike's dog? I know, we jump, but so does the chapter. Uh-huh. The Henry section, the background psyche of Henry. Henry killing Mike's dog because he's been brainwashed by his father.
I was going to say, I think you really need to start with Butch Bowers to really talk about it, right?
And that was when I wanted to talk about this section. I didn't want to ignore the dad thing because that's the bigger piece. Mm-hmm. But that's the cause of Mike's dog's death. Mm-hmm. Henry is just a pawn in Butch Bowers' manipulation of his son. Talk about being a product of your upbringing.
Well, right. Yeah, and I kind of have the note, nature versus nurture. Either one pretty much doomed Henry from the start to a sociopath like Butch Bowers. So genetically, that's already in there, and he's raised by that same asshole to train him to be this way. So it's a double whammy on top of everything. Whichever way you follow is more important for nature or nurture on it, but he's screwed either way. And Butch is just
literally the worst.
Yeah, he's pretty disgusting. He is an awful, awful person. It really feels a lot like we've seen this type of thing in this story already with the background for Tom Rogan, where he was, abused growing up, and that's why he's kind of a product of his upbringing a bit.
Oh, hold on, wait. I forgot about Tom Rogan. I had forgotten about him.
Right.
Sorry. He's literally the worst. Yeah. But go on.
I thought you forgot about him. That's why I was like, I think we got to bring him into this conversation because I think they're kind of vying for who's kind of the most despicable human. And
I like that you specifically said human because Pennywise is literally the worst, but he's
got good intentions. Maybe. I don't know.
Pennywise is just hungry. That's
feed me.
It's not. Audrey too.
It just also really, really sucks for Henry, that he's being rewarded and, encouraged because, he goes and kills the dogs and it's just this is the greatest thing that Butch ever could have, imagined his son doing. He's like, oh my God, my son has finally arrived. He gives him a beer and
let's throw a party.
I mean, essentially. And so, of course, Henry turns into the beast that we see him turn into, it's not surprising at all. It's not justified at all, but it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and my other only note on this is the dog responding to his other name. Mm-hmm. Blood boiling and chilling at the same time. It literally, as a dog lover and who has had neighbor dogs that I never knew their name, I just came up with a name and they would respond to me. It was awesome. Then I read this, and it's oh, damn.
Conditioned to kill.
Yeah.
It's awful. I mean, he took the time to plan this out and work at it.
Yeah.
Right.
The commitment to cruelty is ridiculous.
I do have one other note that I just thought of. The way he did it with the bug poison, the pesticide, let me just say, as somebody who deals with that kind of chemical on a daily basis, I'm glad we've switched now to where a dog wouldn't be affected like that. Just putting it out there. Because, hearing it's just the descriptions.
And he ties him to the tree so he can't get away, too.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, man, it's vile. Ugh. Let's move on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in that section, though, we find out that Mike is going to end up playing football.
Yeah.
And he's good at it. So, like, there's your juxtaposition of nerdy librarian, right? That, like, he almost broke an all-time school record.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we find out a little later, he plays trombone, too.
Right. What a nerd.
Not very well.
But don't matter.
But, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He enjoyed it.
Yes.
Exactly. I just like there's a football player and play trombone.
So then we jump back to the losers.
We got some more. I've got some more Mike thoughts.
Sorry.
Here.
Okay, Mike thoughts.
Because this is the first time that he really gets. So it goes through the whole discussion of each one of them thought that Henry Bowers hated them the most, but really it was Mike because of their dads and all this, and how Butch Bowers basically raised Henry, with all of the slurs and blaming the Hanlons for every single bad thing that's ever happened to them. It's awful. I mean, again, not really going to be able to add much more to how terrible they are. It's really well described and believable because that shit happens.
Right.
I mean, that shit being people's reactions to completely unrelated things, blaming somebody else. Specifically somebody that you think is not a human. And we also have Henry's big first attack on Mike, where he's running down the mud road, and this is where the football comment comes in, because Mike kind of jukes him out and then gets stuck in the mud, and he gets rolled in the mud, and so like that whole scene was awful, but like for lack of a better term, for what we've seen, it's not as bad as anything else we've seen from Henry. Like, Mike almost got off a little easy here compared to what we see him do to others and later.
And really, to me, this is like typical bully crap.
Right.
This is what you expect of an unchecked.
This is a Christmas story bully.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because this is the first time he mentions Mr. Chips, too. He does tell him with his ears full of mud, Mike just doesn't hear it, and Henry knows that he didn't hear it, so he wants to make sure it's, set up for...
related again.
Yeah. But this leads to Will and Mike's mom, and I'm blanking on her name, Jessica, I believe.
Yes.
Talking about this, and reading this, it sucks because I know King's absolutely on point with the mentality and with the actual way things were for growing up in that kind of situation, being African American, and it sucks. I could not imagine it. But like Will having the mindset to tell his son, hey, I don't want you to make running a habit, but don't be dumb. Get out of there and pick your battles. And when you're in it, make sure you're in it. But with Henry, pick them smartly. And I thought that was perfect advice. That's what Mike needed. It's like, don't be scared to run, but also if you're going to stand your ground, make sure you're, in it.
Right. Yeah, that was the main thing I wanted to get to is how kind of pragmatic Will's response is to it. He's like, yeah, it sucks. I would love to be able to go and tell the sheriff, this sheriff is not the guy who helped me get my $200 for the chickens. It's just, the situation's not going to work out for us. And he's going to have to grow up as a black boy. We have to deal with it. He's going to have to deal with it. I can't go fight every single battle of his. And then he kind of goes and talks to Mike later, and that's what he's like, do you know why this is, why he's picking on you the way he is? And Mike's like, I think, kind of.
Right.
Because he hasn't heard the story at the Black Spot yet, right? I mean, this is before that. No. This is really new territory for him. And he's had some confusing conversations with the other kids at school who don't really fall into the Bowers side of things. They fall more to an ignorant part of the spectrum where, I mean, even the one boy in his class was like, this can't be that bad of a word because the way the ignorant child is seeing it, it's like, well, it seems like a lot of positive ways it's being used. It's like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Well, even the teacher, there were racist comments in her teaching too. So mean, it's just everywhere. And I don't know. I have a hard time commenting on it because I think those kinds of things still happen.
They still happen.
A lot. The conversation that Will had with Mike about you need to get out of there, you need to protect yourself because basically what Will is saying to Mike is, at the end of the day, I want you home. At the end of the day, you need to come home safe. Like, yeah, at some point you have to pick your battle, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure you make it home. That conversation still happens every day. And it shouldn't have to, but it does.
No, agreed.
I think I just kind of respect the way Will treats Mike like an adult and teaches him kind of an effective thing. You know, it sucks, but I think Will is giving Mike the tools that he needs, at least to the best that they can. I mean, it's unfortunate they need the tools, but I think Will's doing a good job. All right.
Moving on to Bill's retelling of his conversation with his dad. Let's start with saying the juxtaposition of Richie's mom not checking in, but Bill's dad checking in a little bit. That's like amazing. And Bill having a real moment with that man.
Yeah.
So the moment that really got me, it wasn't just that they were talking. It said at one point, Bill stood close enough to touch his dad's shoulder with like real contact and a real conversation, physical contact. So, that was such a big moment for Bill. You could tell. It just, all the feels.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, right after that, his dad shut him down. It's like the veil dropped again, and like the name again, Zach. Thank you. Zach was like, "Okay, just go." You know, like something happened in that touch where it made him remember. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to do this. You know, and I don't think it was a conscious decision, but there was something that clicked about it. I liked, at the beginning of this part, Bill's starting to retell the story, and he's using the typical embellishments of, oh yeah, I was sitting down having coffee with my dad. You have coffee with your dad? Let's have coffee. Oh yeah, all the time.
Why do you think he did that?
To make himself feel bigger, like better, maybe above, and not purposefully above everybody else, but just to make it seem like him and his dad have, well, twofold. Make him seem cooler, but B, make it seem like him and his dad have that kind of relationship to everybody else.
I don't know. I agree with you that he's definitely doing it for a reason. I don't know if I think he's doing it to make himself like kind of look better or whatever. I think he's so desperate for any kind of attention that he's going to make it up. Even like he's not going to tell him, oh, we were just talking out at the thing, because then it looks like his parents are ignoring him. And even though they are ignoring him, and this is even that little conversation where Zach's working and he's kind of talking to the side, it's nothing compared to what most of these kids get from their parents, you know? Like, there's no attention given to him. So he wants to, I think he's trying to make himself feel better. I think he's compensating. But I also think he's such an author.
Yeah. He's trying to set the scene.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with both of you in particularly Benji's kind of second point there, and which I think went along a lot with what you were saying, Melissa. And I think he's really trying to not show how isolated he is at home to his friends. He wants to look normal to them. He wants to say, you know, hey, I have this healthy family life. Don't question it because I can't broach that subject kind of thing. So he plays it up as, yeah, we do these really cool, normal people things because that's what he wants. Yeah. So I think all three of us are right. Nice job, team. But I do really, really like the conversation that they do have. The information on the sewers under Derry.
Yes.
One of the coolest conversations we've had in this entire book, I think. This one stood out to me.
Okay, engineer, tell me why.
No, it was just, it just felt like everything has led to this kind of confirmation of the sewers are everything. Bill kind of leads into that, and he's like, hey, I think it's the sewers. And because early in that earlier section, I think number 2 or whatever, they're talking about the different monsters. Maybe it might even be the next section, but yeah, because it's when they talk about glamours. But they start connecting like it's the sewers and all of this, and I don't know, just the way that they're described and how King goes through and, you know, has Zach Denbrough say like never go down there. Grown men get lost down there, and like the way Bill kind of uses his authorial mind, his very overactive creation mind, you can tell it's it probably is as scary as he can imagine, especially from what we're learning about the sewers. I just thought it was really, one, the emotional attachment that he's finally getting, mixed with like this kind of old timer information that we've been dying for, at least me. And we only get glimpses of it, and we've gotten so many things confirmed. This was just another big confirmation in a kind of a touching moment that, like Benji said, the veil gets pulled back down. And I liked that it almost got pulled down when Zach was like, "Hey, you should go in, and why don't you go and watch TV? I think Sugarfoot's on tonight." And Bill's like, "I do want to hear. Like, please don't stop. Yeah. Like, please keep talking to me."
Well, stop there. Does Bill want him to keep talking so he can actually hear about the sewers, or does he want him to keep talking just so they keep talking?
Yes, I think both entirely. I really do think it's entirely both, because he's already got these notions about the sewers, and he's like, "Oh, my personal emotional touch button is being pushed." It's nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this part as well, we get Bill repeating the phrase, he pressed his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. Basically saying, I remember now, I kept wanting to do it because my mom had taught me that 2 years ago, but maybe, just maybe, she'll break out of her trance.
Mm-hmm. But the magic words.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful, Billy. What a good boy. What a good boy.
Aw.
Poor Bill.
I know, right? And then they talk, and then Bill gets into his research.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take that on, Luke?
Yeah. So we get, Bill's been reading a bit, we find out, and, they're talking about the different monsters that they've all seen, and we get even more confirmation that Richie and Bill saw 2 different monsters at the same time, with the werewolf and the clown. And so, like, that was really cool. And this is where Bill's like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure everything's coming from the drains, from the sewers." And so then he goes, I went to the library and I looked it up. I'm not going to do the stutter for you. So, I think it's a glamour. And then he goes through and describes what a glamour is and how it has all these different names, where it can kind of just mean like any fictitious monster, quote unquote fictitious monster. The talus, the basically werewolves and vampires and all sorts of different things. And he's basically saying that, at the end of the day, it can be a wolf, a hawk, a sheep, even a bug. Basically, it can be anything. And he's pretty right. It's a boggart, right? He's pretty confident that that's what they have here in Derry.
Yeah, but we also get confirmation of what you figured out already, Luke. It's a boggart to an individual. Because Richie's like, "No, Bill, I told you it wasn't a clown. It was a werewolf." And Eddie says to him, "Dude, it was a werewolf to you. It was a clown to him." It's, I believe it was Eddie that called it out. But it's kind of, like I said, you picked that up early on, with it. And that was actually one thing that I glanced over, that I wasn't realizing that they were seeing different things.
No, it was Bill that realized that it was both at the same time. He said it was a werewolf for you. And it was a werewolf for you because you had seen that dumb movie at the Aladdin, and he doesn't say it was a clown specifically for some reason, other than it's just kind of what it is. But so we get kind of cool confirmation on that, and so then they kind of talk about, did they give you a way to kill it? And he's like, "Yeah, it's really weird." And so he talks about the Ritual of Chud, or Chud. And it's the Himalayan holy man when you're going up against a talus or a talus. And so the talus stuck its tongue out. You stuck out yours. You and it overlapped tongues, and then you both bit in all the way, so you were sort of stapled together, eye to eye. "Oh, I think I'm gonna puke," says Beverly. And so then Bill goes on. He says, "Well, this sounds crazy, but the book says that then you started telling jokes and riddles." And I love that they get into like he gives like the, "Hey, I'm not making this up, I'm just reporting the news" kind of thing. Because we've all had that reaction to something. It's like, It sounds crazy. I know. I'm just telling you what I heard. Like, I'm not making this up.
So it's a very Bilbo Baggins Gollum situation, only with tongue biting.
Yeah, a little more touchy-feely.
A little more ritualistic.
Yes.
A prescribed riddle telling as opposed to just randomly stumbling upon it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically you keep telling jokes and riddles until the other one can't answer or cracks up laughing, but you have to keep answering correctly and not laughing, and so clearly Richie Tozier is the man for the job.
Except for the whole laughing at himself part. I don't know if he'll be able to keep a straight face.
What are the rules?
So then they sort of decide to, like, they kind of finish the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they play. Like, let's just be kids now.
Right. Hey, Stan did a thing. He's like, I've got fireworks.
Well, the 4th is tomorrow. I got fireworks. Let's go shoot stuff off.
It was more just Stan did a thing. Stan was involved. Good for Stan.
Stan stood out from the crowd for once.
So yeah, and I on that scene I have a note for Bev liking the quiet and not really wanting to do and go and leave and do the boy quote unquote things, showing she's still a girl, and even though she's one of the guys, but she still finally is like she's like, what do you want to go do? Play guns and shoot, jump in the mud and this and that? And that's when Stan's like, I got firecrackers. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. That'll be fun. But her just kind of, it's just a subtle way to remind, the boys, hey, sometimes we don't have to do the boy-esque things. I like the girly things or the quiet things to a point.
I don't ever take that as that.
Okay.
Like, I don't ever read a girl in a situation with boys as needing to be reminded that she's a girl. And
I'm not saying they needed to remind, it was her way.
The fact that you read it that way seems very off to me, because as a girl, I don't need somebody to remind me that, oh, there happens to be a girl character. And so I find it very disconcerting that there might be people who do need the reminder that it's, or not even that the author intends it that way, but are taking things in there and putting blatant spins on it because she happens to be a girl. But those kinds of spins aren't being put on things, oh, because Stan's a Jew, or oh, because Richie wears glasses. Because she's a girl doesn't mean that she likes quiet. It's just a person who happened to be enjoying that moment. So for me, it doesn't become a gender thing. It's just a person enjoying the moment that they're in.
Okay, fair.
So I just...
I know. It was just something that kind of popped out to me, just had the thought of...
Yeah, I'm just curious that it has to go to the gender place instead of just being
that's the way,
person who is being a person and enjoying that moment.
Because she called it out of saying, oh, you don't want to do the, you want to go play in the mud and
the only thing she said you want to... I suppose you want to do something babyish, like going down to the dump to breaking bottles with rocks.
Okay.
So she didn't call it a boy thing. She didn't call it a boy thing.
She called it a bit. You're right. So I don't know. I guess I just put my own spin on, like you said. And if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I'm one to own up to it.
I just think it would be interesting to start noticing some of those gender slants as we're reading on, do I think this because it actually means this because she's a girl, or am I taking it that way because...
And that's fair, and I probably am taking it that way, just remembering, and I'll own that,
Okay, that's just what popped in my head there. So I'm going to move on. And I want to talk about the Jungle Safari game, which was awesome.
I have a thing right before that.
Oh, sure. All right.
Because as they start, thinking of places where they can go and shoot these fireworks off, because they can't really do that in the Barrens. It's not going to be loud enough, right? I mean, that's what they got to go for.
There's also a lot of firewood that could, burn.
Right. But something that definitely stood out to me was the very last section of section 4, the last paragraph. And it gets into, the sound of it drifted across the broad, shallow expanse of the Kenduskeag on that day before July 4th, a summer sound as bright as the sun rays darting off the water, and none of them saw the orange eyes staring at them from a tangle of brambles and sterile blackberry bushes to their left. This brambly patch scrubbed the entire bank for 30 feet, and in the center of it was one of Ben's Morlock holes. It was from this raised concrete pipe that the eyes, each more than 2 feet across, stared.
Yeah, good catch that was there.
Yeah,
Creepy.
that was, you're being watched. And what the hell has 2 feet across eyes?
A whale? First of all, how does something with whose eyes have a 2-foot diameter fit in a Morlock hole?
Which are like 10 foot wide, is what I think they were described as. For the standpipes, right?
I thought he said 60 inches.
Those are for the pipes in the ground. These are for the standpipes that come up. I think he said that they were 10 foot across.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but these are basically the large sump pumps.
Yeah.
I think you could have something that is 5 foot wide and have... No, you can't, because you could, okay, it would have to be at least 6 foot wide, right? Like, thinking about proportions of a face. I wish I had a ruler.
Could be a hammerhead shark.
Well, but can you imagine the eyes on that thing? Yeah, I don't know.
It
huge.
was definitely something that jumped out at me on my read through here, and I was like, yeah, that's not a good sign. Not that they see it, but they're clearly being watched.
Yeah, it's not so good. And listen to, like, I don't think it's fair that the bad guy gets to eavesdrop on you when you have, maybe not, maybe all is fair in war, right? Like, spies would try and bug you and eavesdrop on you and you wouldn't know. So, all right, fine. I'll allow it.
And then we get into basically the Bowers and Victor Chris and them starting after Mike Hanlon here as well.
Right.
And how Bowers kind of forces the other boys to help him do his work. And it kind of really seems like Victor Chris and the other boys really don't want to hang out at the Bowers place because, one, they get put to work. And they don't trust Butch, right? I mean...
Yeah.
As well they shouldn't. Look at them having some sense.
Right. And they're clearly also being bullied by Henry. And Henry is really, really starting to worry Victor more and more and more as we go. So that's definitely interesting.
I had a thought. I'm trying to find it. I just think it's really interesting in general, that idea of other forces being at work this summer. And it really plays into that moment is when it hit me, because there are bigger things happening to move them along, right? Those boys never went to the Bowers farm, but that day they did. It is highly unlikely they would have seen Mike leave, but on that day they did.
They've been put to work there before.
Yeah, that's why they didn't want to go before.
Not very often. Like, they try really hard to avoid it, but that day they went.
Mm-hmm.
And that day they left just in time to see Mike. And that day the losers just happened to want to play outside the Barrens. And that day, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many just so happens happening that they're not just so happens, I don't think.
And actually, going along with your point, I have the next section highlighted. But it was Mike himself years later who advanced the idea that perhaps none of them were entirely their own masters in the events of that summer. That if luck and free will had played parts, then their roles had been narrow ones. And that kind of goes right in, because like you said, Melissa, the Stan yours is in the Barrens right now with a set of Black Cats, and Victor Chris and Belch and Henry all have their M80s, firecrackers, and cherry bombs ready to go. It's all coincidental. I mean, granted, yeah, it's the day before the 4th of July, but like they all have the same idea, and Mike happens to end up in the mill, unknowingly,
Yeah. I like the idea of Henry's gang competing in the Olympic walking competition, though.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Like, that was the funniest moment of the chapter.
I think it was. I think so.
It's not my favorite moment. I thought about picking. I'm like, no, it's just really funny, but it's not the best moment. Any other thoughts on the early part of the race, of the chase? We
meet two characters we haven't really heard much of. If we have, it's been just barely in passing, with Peter Gordon and Moose Sadler, who were kind of along for the ride with the bullies. Doesn't seem like they're kind of the usuals, but at least Peter Gordon definitely doesn't seem to be, this is his normal crowd kind of thing. But basically, yeah, Moose Sadler kind of gives away the hunt, and
what a moose,
for lack of a better term, when he breaks some wind behind Mike and lets off the first firecracker, is what it said.
Aww.
And so that's where Mike looked around. Henry saw his eyes widen, and then they start chasing after him. And the chase is on. But at the same time...
Right. At the same time, Jungle Safari game. Can we talk about the Jungle Safari game? I'm so excited.
It's time for the Jungle Safari time.
We're following the leader, the leader. It was just John and whoever the little brother is from Peter Pan. Well, Peter and Wendy are off the mermaids, but it's the Lost Boys playing Follow the Leader. That is the only thing I ever picture every time I've ever read this book. And it's so much fun because they're so serious about it.
John and Michael.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
The darlings.
Yes, but not Nana. She didn't make it to Neverland.
She didn't make it. But yeah, again, this is every time I've seen the young group together in the Barrens where they're doing kind of their imagination games. I mean, it just feels like such an 80s movie thing to me. Like, I don't know what it is because I know this is when this came out, and it makes me think of like the Goonies and like a whole bunch of other things that it's just like, this is exactly the feeling that I feel like Steven Spielberg is the one who's directing these scenes, if that makes sense. Like, I just feel like he's involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I have to say, I feel it's perfectly natural because I've done this with groups of kids. You know, when I was younger, me and, my buddies would ride our bikes and, through the park and, oh, watch out, they're coming in with choppers, they're coming in here, watch out to your left, and you just play along. It's the imagination game kind of thing, that, to me, it felt just normal. That's what you're 10, 11 years old. It's what you do. And so that's why I like this scene, is because it's just one of those, okay, this absolutely could have happened, probably happened at some point, know.
And I'm definitely not saying it doesn't feel realistic. It's just always makes me remind me of that 80s movie group of kids type feel. And it's fun. It's innocent.
Is why it works, because everybody's done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So everybody's done it, but Luke is saying this feels more like the stylized movie version of it.
Oh, no, and I completely agree with him. I'm just, adding in that to me it felt just supernatural because, not supernatural.
Not supernatural.
Extra natural.
But
for real? No, I see. No.
It just felt true to experiences that I've seen.
That's fair.
And by the way, there's piranhas! Enter my young Tantor.
Yeah.
Soundbite there. There are no piranhas in Africa. Don't tell him that. Actually, she's right. Piranhas are native to South America. It's fighting
the things you learn in Tarzan.
I know. But sidebar, there's piranhas.
Yeah.
Maybe? Piranhas?
Totally piranhas. We'll get back there, I think.
We are. We're going to get back to piranhas, but just know the piranhas. Go on.
At least they weren't leeches.
Right? Stand By Me action.
There you go, Luke.
Also written by Stephen King.
I know, that's why I called it out.
The Body.
Yeah.
You know what else is in that same book?
Shawshank Redemption.
Very good. Apt Pupil.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah, I don't know the fourth.
I don't know it either off the top of my head. It wasn't out of the four. It was the worst.
Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't a big fan of Apt Pupil either, but that's okay. All right.
The movie wasn't bad.
Nah, I don't watch movies that are made from books most of the time. I like, and if I do, I make fun of them.
It's Ian McKellen.
Don't care. Shawshank Redemption was the best Stephen King movie ever. Let's move on. So we go back to a little bit of the chase, and this is when
we do have another quick thing before that.
Okay.
So they think about.
I'm doing badly here.
Oh, it's all right. There's just so many fast scenes
Moments.
here. Yeah, there really, really are. And so nice job on the summary, Benj. That was a lot of work, I know. But we have Armando Fazio, who runs the dump, and basically they see him there working on the old bulldozer, and so they know that they can't go play there. But I just kind of thought his character was a little interesting. Like, he's sitting there working, and he always runs kids out of the dump because it's dangerous. And then also, as they're deciding not to go in there, he sees them silhouetted against the top of the hill, and he's like, he considers telling them not to come, to go to the Barrens because that's no place for kids. It's not safe in the Barrens either. So, I don't know who this guy thinks he is, but no,
Why don't you be nice? Why don't you be nice kids?
Be nice kids. Go play in the park. We don't like the park. It's just kind of an interesting character who seems to maybe know something about the Barrens. Kind of one of those.
Or at the very least know that, like, kids only go there to get in trouble. Like, don't do that.
Right.
It
might not really be that sinister, what he knows. It could just be, like you're saying, it's just kind of a dangerous place. Like, especially if the water gets high or whatever, it sweeps through. It's just kind of
It's dangerous to go alone.
It's dangerous to go in the Barrens alone.
That's true. Or with people. Okay. I would like to make fun of Peter Gordon now.
Okay.
Peter Gordon, and there are other things that happen in the chase, and I'm not discounting that. But the moment that really struck me as like, are you kidding me? Was when Mike gets behind the fence and the gate is closed, and Peter Gordon's like, well, that's not fair. Come on, play fair.
Fair
and
up.
I was like, you entitled little bastard. It's like 5-on-1, and you're talking about not fair because it's not even fair. It doesn't lean towards your side getting what they want. That's not fair. That's entitled. Peter Gordon is like the epitome of that.
Oh yeah.
As is like the rest of Bauer's gang. But Peter Gordon, because for him, we'll just get him. And what do you mean we don't get this? No, bastard, you don't get this. That's all. I'm done. Go on about your part of the chase.
Well, my first note on it is Victor being not always to like hanging out with Henry because he might go too far. He's like, yeah, I'm in for, beating somebody up or knocking them down, picking on him a little bit. But Henry, he's one crazy MFer. I don't know what he's going to do. And you get the signs of Victor might not be the absolute worst. He has somewhat of a conscience.
I mean, he's not good, but I agree that of all the bad, he's the most likely to have a chance at redemption.
I was going to say, he could be redeemable. It seems like he kind of wants to be. Like, he doesn't, if he gets pulled into it, he's going to hold his own for whatever reasons, which I have plenty of Victor Chris thoughts as well. But, yeah, like, he's consistently seeing that Bowers is kind of escalating things, but really can't seem to pull himself out of it because of the fear for himself. Knowing that if he backs out, I mean, basically he becomes an enemy, and then what can he do? It really reminds me of, like the Nazi soldiers, like a lot of them were bullied, like back in 1942, that kind of Nazi soldier. Nothing to do with the current day. But
yeah, right.
Basically, a lot of their soldiers, went in to fight for the army, for their country nationalism, and got kind of swept into the Third Reich, really, really negative things. And it was kind of if you want to be the only one not doing it, guess what? You're going to be on the chopping block because you can't stand against the group. For more on that, definitely check out The Man in the High Castle on Netflix. There's a lot of kind of things in there where it's like, once you're so far in, you can't really go against it because without basically sacrificing everything, and that's hard to do.
Right.
So even though it's wrong, it's still not easy. But Belch is a total moron. Like, he's just like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I don't think he has any reservations like Victor Chris does.
Is it because he doesn't have a conscience, or because he doesn't have, like, intellect?
He's just a moron. I think it's because he's an idiot. That's really what I think.
Like a low IQ, low functioning.
Yeah. Him and Moose.
I think Moose is, same thing for Moose. Yeah. And they're also afraid of Henry as well, but I don't think they can. I think the speeds at which they all run is a little bit indicative of their IQ prowess as well. Because you do have Peter Gordon and Victor Chris, who are well ahead of the other ones, and the three lumbering in the back are kind of the dumbest. I don't know if that's intentional, but I can definitely see a parallel there.
I think it's definitely a visual that was probably intended.
So we have Mike on one side of the fence and Henry and crew on the other side of the fence. And basically Mike starts to back off and run or back away before Henry, I believe, threw an M80 to kind of shock him. And then he lets out that he killed his dog. That adrenaline dump plus heartbreak that it intermix is just that double gut shot that I'm surprised Mike was able to function, because that's a complete shock to your system. You get information like that, plus all the, running and adrenaline that you've had pumping through you. It's amazing, and you can see it by his response of, cursing him back out, that, it just, I can't even say, but I can only imagine how that would feel getting that information at that time.
Yeah. And like, eventually he's like, but my dog wasn't, my dog's not black. That's what he says. But like, he was just a dog.
Right.
If you're going to do something to me, but he was just a dog. That's what I think not breaks Mike, but that's when I think Mike decides, like,
this is a time to stand up.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take a stand, and this was it, because it's not about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the narrator kind of references that earlier in that conversation with Will, and he's like, he didn't know that he would be doing that on July 3rd. Hey, let's talk about July 3rd kind of thing. I like when the narrator does that, when he's like, hey, he being narrator, not a specific pronoun, but when the narrator, because Pennywise is clearly telling us this story, is like, hey, here's a piece of information that you're going to learn about at the end of this chapter. Like, I just like those little throw-aheads that the narrator does consistently. It's like every single chapter does it.
Right. So let me jump back to the losers really quick.
Yeah.
And my thought is, how does Bill know to get the rocks? They hear the M80 go off, but how does he know?
Right. Totally senses the danger and calls for, like, call to action for preparation. Like, it was really kind of, and everyone else was kind of like, what? And he's like, get ammo, like, do it. And they're like, okay, I guess we're getting ammo.
Because they had no idea. Like, they heard something, but it was like, what?
Right, they're just against other kids with more firecrackers. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, whatever.
Right.
But, yeah, Bill apparently has some inherent siren going off that says, hey, something bad's gonna happen.
And then they show up, Mike first, with the line of kids.
Yeah. And so I have the line quoted here. They were spread out in a straight line, and there was a funny look on their faces. It wasn't until later, when he had a chance to sort out his thoughts, that he had realized what was so odd about that look. It was as if they were expecting him.
And then here comes the other ones.
Right on his heels, right?
And Ben tells Beverly that he thinks she should, like, step back. And this moment I loved. Because she says, shit on that, Ben Hanscom. Shit all over that. She bent down and began to gather rocks for herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, screw you. Stop treating me like I'm some, like, thing to be protected, because quite frankly, I can do a lot of damage too. And I'm part of this. So back off and leave me alone.
Yeah, I don't know if she necessarily, like, thinks less of him because of, right? I don't think she's like, oh, you think I'm weak. I think she kind of realizes Ben's the kid that's read all these books, and he's the one that's, seen all these stories, that's like the common thing. It's like, oh, protect the girl. Like, that's all Ben's gonna know. And I think she realizes that, and she's like, no, shit on that. Like, that's,
I don't think she's
dumb.
mad at him. I think it's more like, screw that. I'm not playing the damsel in distress.
Right.
I don't think that was against him. It was more on that, I want to say preconceived notion, but it's that gender bias of girls can't or girls shouldn't or we have to protect. And she's like, screw that. I can do it too.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. I just wanted to, I didn't think that there was like any her going against Ben.
That is not what I intended.
Yeah. I was just.
No. It was more like, screw that idea.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come to Ben's defense a little. It's not because she is a girl that he was saying get back. It's because he's in love with her.
That is definitely a part of it, I think.
That's more of it, more so than it's because he, it's a girl. It's I don't want you getting hurt. That's, and so, I mean, I could be,
No, I agree with you. I just think it goes back to that, like, gender bias of men thinking because they care about you, because they care about a girl, then they have to protect the girl. A girl would never, like, it wouldn't go the other way. It wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to protect you, so step back. Like, no, it's a gender bias that she is eschewing at this moment. I am not faulting him for what he says. I'm saying I'm so proud that she threw that off and was like, fuck that, because I'm not going to be the girl. I'm going to be a person here.
Completely agreed.
So somebody else that kind of threw something off was Eddie. And he kind of thrusts his own self-consciousness. I don't think is really the right word. I think it kind of fits. Basically, he kind of says, no, I can't be afraid here because I have to help my friends. And and that's really about it. He just kind of gains some confidence knowing that they need him. And when he ignores his lack of self-worth, his afraid to do things because he was ingrained by his mother to think that, when he ignores that, he's just as capable or better than other kids in physical activity. We've seen that over and over again. And I think he kind of took the bull by the horns and chose to ignore it this time. Kind of like we've seen with older Eddie when he finally left his wife to go.
Right.
But it was just kind of a similar moment there where he realized my instinct, aka his mother's voice, says, don't do this thing because it's not what I should do. It's not safe. It's dangerous. And he's like, fuck that. I'm in. I have to do this. Good for Eddie.
I agree. Then we get the charge and the call to action. The official, order to go get them from Bill. And the moment he gives the order and then he goes and does not stop to see if anybody goes with him. And it was such an Aragorn moment.
Yeah.
Of we are going to do this. Let's go. And he goes. No looking back. No waiting for anybody else. This is what we're doing. And just trusting that either they're going to follow him and they're with him or they're not. And he's going to do it anyway. It just Return of the King feel to me.
Yep. I'm with you.
Okay.
We also see, Beast Mode Ben again, right?
I
Whenever, I think was it Bowers that uses a pretty nasty, gender bias slur against Bev, and so here he does kind of take the bull by the horns, I'll use that term again, and that being himself, and goes and straight up tackles, just runs through Bowers here, right? It says he went flying. I love that idea that he's totally just committed and just bull rushes him.
Yeah, and then that a little later, he does this, or he threatens the same thing, basically, when he makes the same comment to Bev, or makes another derogatory comment to Bev. Sorry, trying to find the note here. Get to it. Oh, never mind. I can't. Nope, I lost it. Okay, never mind. I'm moving on, sorry.
So shit's kind of going down. There's kind of fighting all around. People are getting hit with rocks. People are throwing rocks. Victor Criss kind of stands off to the side, and it's kind of said he was the most affected because he was the most emotionally not invested because he didn't want to be there.
And that totally made sense to me, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when you have your wits about you, you can stop and think and plan.
Yeah, absolutely. He was able to sit back and deal some real poignant damage, and that kind of sucks. Oh, and Peter Gordon had already pissed off by then. He was like, this isn't... He threw some hesitant rocks, it said, and just slowly backed away. He's like, douchebag. He's like, I don't want to be a part of this stupid fight. But
he's a yuppie. He's a yuppie trying to hang out on the other side of the tracks.
Douchebag who's like, it's all fun and games until I can get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't want to hurt Mike earlier either. I read that a lot different than you do.
It's not fair. See, I think it came down to part of it is, okay, Bowers is crazy and this is way worse, but part of it is also this is beyond my limit of what I wanted to do. I wanted to beat up a kid. I didn't want to potentially get actually injured and get involved in this big thing.
I don't know if I got that feeling from him. He was there to chase, and because when he's like, hey, this is not fair.
He had to know what was coming. He had to know what was
he's
coming.
An idiot.
Yeah. They said we're going to put firecrackers in his shoes. That's what Bowers had told him. He's like, yeah, we're going to put firecrackers in his shoes. And it's not...
That was a conversation between Victor Criss and Henry Bowers. We don't know that Peter was listening on that.
Either way.
But...
I'm glad he left. It's one less person, but...
I read him as he's the yuppie rich kid that wanted to hang out with the cool poor kids, and then when shit got serious, he's like, nope. And I don't know if it was just the heat getting injured. I think he was just like, not my monkey, not my tree, kind of thing, or whatever the saying is. He's like,
he probably became like a stockbroker or something.
Yeah.
Well, there was a line in there about how, like, until this day, he thought that he was going to a certain school, which makes me think that because of this day, he's not. Like, somehow they're going to get in trouble. It might be a prediction more than anything. We might not ever find out, but it, like, left it open as to whether or not he actually got to go to the fancy school later on that he was hoping to.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's fancy lad school.
Right.
Yeah. So I did find the note of it, because it's after that point where Peter pisses off and Victor jumps out too, because Bill basically said, "Get the hell out, you're done." And we're left with Henry, Moose, and Belch. But basically, Henry's, Beverly says, "Get out of our place." Henry says, "Shut up, you." And 4 rocks flew him at once, hitting Henry in 4 different places. He screamed and scrambled backward over the weeded rail ground, the tears of his shirt flapping around him. Basically, he made one more comment about Bev, and that was the last straw. It was the where do whores go mentality of, you say that one more time and you're done kind of thing, and that just broke all their camel's back, to finish them off.
Mm-hmm. So, right before that scene, we had Victor Chris squaring off one-on-one with Bill, right? I mean, talk about Uber Bill the Impervious. Like, it was awesome. So Bill started to walk toward Victor now, and Victor began to walk toward Bill. At the same moment, as if by some telepathic signal, they began to throw rocks at each other, still closing the distance. The fighting flagged around them as the others turned to watch. Even Henry turned his head. Victor ducked and bobbed, but Bill made no such effort. Victor's rocks slammed him in the chest, the shoulder, and the stomach. One clipped by his ear. Apparently unshaken by any of this, Bill threw one rock after another, pegging them with murderous force. The third one struck Victor's knee with a brittle chipping sound, and Victor uttered a stifled groan. And, I mean, it's just kind of like, then he has, like, the one rock left, and Victor's out of rocks, and he's like, "You're done. You need to leave, because you're not going to walk away very easily from this." And just seems like freaking Iron Man walking at him. You're just like, they're just not phasing him, because he's in adrenaline superhero Bill mode.
I like superhero Bill mode.
Right. Master Chief Bill. I thought that was pretty awesome. It's
very much like his death wish, like when he rides Silver. It's that same mentality of like, I don't care what happens to me. I literally don't care what happens to me. It's not about me. It's about you leaving. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make you leave, because what happens to me doesn't matter. You're still going to leave.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I didn't think about it till just now, so
nice.
Like it wasn't
nice. Yeah. Good team.
Look at me making a connection from you.
There you go. So then, after Henry is on the ground, and basically his voice kind of breaks when he's throwing some more insults, and it says, "That voice, Henry's voice broke and wavered on the edge of tears. That voice took the last of the fight out of Belch and Moose. They backed away, the remaining rocks dropping from relaxing hands. Belch looked around as if wondering exactly where he might be." So, something here clearly kind of awakens Belch from the bloodlust that we've seen over and over. The it-induced, over ridiculous amount of hatred, kind of bloodlust. And it was clearly kind of being set through the entire chapter, as it was in Henry the whole chapter, but it kind of fed its way into the others, aside from Victor Chris, who seemed to be kind of fighting it, which was something I was kind of picking up on the whole chapter.
All right. Any last thoughts before we move on to our next section?
Yeah, so at the very, very end, Bill looked from Mike to Richie. Richie met his eyes, and Bill seemed almost to hear the click, some final part fitting neatly into a machine of unknown intent. He felt ice chips scatter up his back. We're all together now. Now it all starts.
Yeah.
So, something we've been kind of talking about. Confirmed.
The circle closes.
All right, so we're going to jump into our section called Questions for the New Reader. It looks like we have 3. Mine starts off. So, Luke, were there really piranha fish in the stream?
As real as any of the other Pennywise monsters we've seen.
So that was definitely a Pennywise monster, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, to me it was. We saw the giant eyes earlier on, and so at that point it was kind of like, okay, well, he's around, he's watching, and then, as the story is kind of, I guess, Bill's imagination story is kind of being told, and with input from Bev as they're going, and, everyone kind of has their part to play, and they get to the fish and why they can't fall in the water, and I guess it's just Eddie that potentially sees the piranhas, and so I really got the feeling, because it even said that they're orange, the same as the buttons kind of thing. I don't know if it specifically references right there.
Yeah, it says,
he looked into the bright water, and for one moment, between the sun flashes that darted arrows of light into his eyes, he actually saw the cruising piranhas. They were not part of the make-believe that went with Bill's jungle safari fantasy. He was quite sure of that. The fish he saw looked like oversized goldfish with the great ugly jaws of catfish or groupers. Saw teeth protruded between their thick lips, and like goldfish, they were orange as the fluffy pom-poms you sometimes saw on the suits the clowns wore at the circus. They circled in the shallowed water, gnashing.
Yeah, so was it Eddie that almost fell in?
Yep.
Yeah,
and Stan grabbed
I think
him.
he absolutely would have been torn to shreds if he had actually fallen in. So,
all right. Question 2. Benj, that's you.
Of all of the parents, at least the ones we've met, and I think we've met all of them, who would be most likely to seriously listen about it? And I'm going to cut you off here, besides Will.
He's
Why?
the only one. Will's the only one.
I think, I'm just, personally, I think Richie's dad probably would give him, maybe not believe him, but he'd hear him out.
Yeah, but I don't think you can discount Will as the best option.
Okay.
He's basically saying, hey, who else?
That was a foregone conclusion
Right.
that he would. So I was kind of cutting that off there. But I mean, yeah, Will obviously would be the best to talk to because he's experienced.
Richie's dad, maybe. I mean, the only real conversation we had with him, there's not a whole lot of tell that he would really believe anything. But he could potentially listen, at least. Because
it can't be Bev's dad. It can't be Eddie's mom. It can't be Ben's mom. It can't be Bill's parents. Maybe Stan's parents. We know nothing about them.
They are Pennywise. Ooh. No, they're not.
I know. I'm just kidding. But so, I mean, Will is number 1, and then it's a toss up between Stan's parents or Richie's dad.
I could say maybe like Ben's mom. It would take a lot of talking though, like to get through her. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I just don't know if she. I don't think she would blow them off, but I don't think she has enough personal strength or backbone or something. She's no Joyce Myers.
Listen. That's why I think she'd listen.
But I don't think she'd be able to do anything. Whereas Will might have at least a plan or an idea or support more than just willing to listen.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Question 3. Why is the Rockfight called Apocalyptic? That's just what do you think, Luke?
I mean, it's definitely pretty bloody, but it's not that bad. Like, to be apocalyptic. So, specifically, I don't really know. Other than... Okay. Because apocalyptic should mean end of days. I mean, I don't think this is the last day of the story, as we've seen most of these characters in the future.
And we are on only chapter 13.
Right. We've got plenty more to go. I don't know. I really...
Okay.
To me, it seems a little aggressive of a descriptor.
But isn't it something that some well-read kids would pull out as like a big fancy adjective that maybe they don't understand really well? Not that I'm saying that's really it, but... That
I can buy, especially for who these kids are. Like, they've never had anything as drastic as this, where someone it literally seemed like they were trying to kill them, other than their monsters, which they're dealing with in other ways. This was a collective thing that they all got to participate in. So maybe it was end of days of not being in the losers, the fully oiled machine that they.
Well, and you said apocalyptic usually means like world changing or ending, and at the end of the chapter it was and now it begins. So maybe this is the beginning of the end.
Right. That could be. Yeah. Okay. So it's the thing that sets the end in motion, the sounding of the seventh trumpet, if you will.
Oh, great. Darn that seventh trumpet. All right, now we get into your ideas and questions from the new reader.
All right, I actually have a couple questions. Again, these are usually pretty just rhetorical because most likely you either can't or won't answer them, but I actually have a question. What kind of monster was Pennywise hiding as where there were 2-foot eyes, like across? Like, what animal has 2-foot eyes across? Maybe the Rodan monster that we saw? Maybe, like, the monster of the Black Lagoon. Like, those are, like, the two huge style animals or monsters we've really seen. I'm going to say it's likely something else, though.
So, really quick, because I'm blanking on the description here. Was it each eye was 2 feet across, or was it 2 feet across the eyes? It was 2 feet. Okay.
It says they were each 2 feet.
And we don't even know how many eyes there were. It does not say 2 eyes. It just says with eyes 2 foot across.
Fair. Okay.
So I was like, are there more than 2 eyes? Like, how many gigantic bulbous eyes are there?
So my only response to your question, I'm just going to answer it with another question. Who says it's in a monster form?
So you think it just is 2 eyes?
Or that size eyes? Or, I'm saying, does it have to be in some shape form all the time?
We've seen, I guess, the Pennywise, the monster, the Pennywise. We've seen the Pennywise kind of at the end of Bill and Richie's bicycle running away from the house on Nebel Street. It turns into kind of with the werewolf and the clown chase, it turns into like a bulb of light to go into. That's what Bill kind of sees go down into the sewer drain there. So yeah, it could just be 2 big eyes, like kind of unformed, or just a couple of big orange balls. I don't know.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a man-made movie monster. It could be maybe it's his natural form, and his natural form body has 2 foot wide eyes.
Sure. Yeah. That's
I'm just saying, like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a horror flick.
Yeah.
Thing. That's all I meant.
I think it could definitely be something more abstract. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If that
or
is
just
closer.
That's his natural state. I don't know. I don't remember, but that's what I picture it as.
Sure. Fair.
Right.
So I think this chapter may have had my actual first, fright. It was really more of just like narrative excitement for me than anything, though. And it was, can you guys guess?
Narrative fright, the part that was most frightening to you?
Yeah, I guess.
Kind of jarring, if you will. No.
So it was actually the descriptions of the sewers under the city by Zach D. And I know there was something about it, the way he described it, of when, the men would go down there and they would get lost, and it was like a maze under the city. It was just kind of like I felt like I could be there. Like I could mentally put myself there, and it was just really, really well done, and it's something that I've been excited to learn more about throughout this whole book, because that seems to be the belly of the beast, and
right.
It was just really kind of neat to get that. I was like, oh, I can kind of feel the trickling water down these 6 foot wide, tubes, because I've been in 6 foot wide concrete, waterways before, and it's like I can imagine what that's like. And when he describes how 12 different cities have built onto this, and nobody really knows where it all goes, and it's awesome when it works, but when it gets backed up, that's when kind of shit goes downhill. And so I don't know. I just thought it was kind of a cool thing. My last kind of thing here is I think we've officially heard the voice of the turtle for maybe the first time. And it was Mike hearing it. Let me see if I can quickly find where that was. I had it in here earlier. That's after that. All right. So this is when Mike has closed the gate behind him, and Henry had just thrown the cherry bomb into there and exploded next to him. And the bang silenced them all for a moment. Mike stared unbelievingly at them through the fence, and they stared back. Peter Gordon looked utterly shocked, and even Belch looked stunned. They're scared of him now, Mike thought suddenly, and a new voice spoke inside of him. Perhaps for the first time, a voice that was disturbingly adult. They're scared, but that won't stop them. You got to get away, Mikey, or something's going to happen. Not all of them will want it to happen. Maybe not Victor, maybe not Peter Gordon, but it will happen anyway, because Henry will make it happen. So get away fast. And yes, that could be similar to what we've seen with Bill, where at times he goes into his grown-up voice. But to me, this stood out as, I'm making a prediction that this is the voice of the turtle that we've heard of before.
Okay. All right, let's get into our favorite thing. Benj, what was your favorite thing?
You want to shoot off some firecrackers? Stan asked, and Mike's grin was answer enough. It was that the circle's complete. They just knew he belonged. Unlike the other kid with the speech impediment and other people that joined, Mike belonged, and they've been waiting for him, and now it's begun.
My favorite moment was when Mike ran up and the 6 of them were standing there in the straight line, that they were spread out. They knew what was coming. They were prepared. And that, like, just that visual of the 6 kids standing there waiting to make a stand. That's my favorite part.
Absolutely.
How about you, Luke?
I kind of already touched on it, but Zachy D's information about the sewers and getting lost under the city, and kind of the idea of being swallowed by the city's underbelly. Like, they say some people go down there and never come back. I just can easily imagine it getting a couple little snacks down there, unwary travelers kind of falling into his lair, into the gullet of the city. And I just really, really enjoyed that visual.
And that wraps us up for this episode. We can be found on Twitter at Floats Down Here. You can send us your very own message balloon at floatsdownhere@gmail.com. Check us out on our website, thepodcastthat.com. In particular, check out our TeePublic store where you can purchase your own Floats Down Here merch, like a coffee cup or a cell phone case, or even better, a hoodie, because who doesn't want to stay warm and protected against all of those crazy clowns running around your towns? Subscribe and rate on iTunes.
Stay away from the clowns in your towns. I love it.
Yeah, right? Every time.
And check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/stayimaginary. We have a lot of really cool reward tiers, including some that get you invited into our Slack channel, where you can talk to us all one-on-one.
Join us next time when we discuss chapter number 14, The Album.
You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.